Welcome to the Scott Townsend Show, brought to you by Dietzo Man Productions.
For this project, it was reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, so hence the name of the project, Books of Titans. At first, like the first year of my reading list, it was 52 books suggested by guests on Tim Ferriss's podcast. And so I read Tools of Titans, I think November, December 2016. And I just saw all these books suggested, and I was like, man, these look amazing. And these books impacted some of the top performers that we know of right now. So what if I read those books? Would it have the same impact on me? And there were just so many books that were like, man, I want to read all these right now.
Hey, this is Scott Townsend. Welcome back to the Scott Townsend Show. And today I have with me good friend. He's a reader, to say the least. He's the owner of the Books of Titans website and podcast. He's an online consultant and business manager of a local bookstore. He's coming to us from Franklin, Tennessee. Welcome, Erik Rostad.
Good to be back, Scott.
Did I get that last name right?
Rostad.
Yeah. Rostad. Okay. So what's been going on, man? I think it's been a while since you've been on the show. We were talking about books last time, and I plan on having you on talking about books again today. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, you wrote an article and did a podcast over a year ago about the 10 rules of reading, your 10 rules of reading. And I thought that was really interesting, and that's been over a year. So I thought there's a lot of people out there listening that read a lot, read some, or not at all, and they want to start, and they just need a little encouragement. There's nobody more disciplined in reading than Erik. So he's a great resource for how to read, how to get more books read in a year. And so let's just kick it off here. Your goal is 52 books a year. Is that right? Or did this year change?
That's right. This year was a little different. I relaxed that rule. So, and that's kind of the funny thing is you mentioned going through these rules, because I've broken a lot of them this year. But there's reasons for it. Yeah, I broke the first commandment here. So, but yeah, basically, to take a step back, these rules are not for everybody. These are the rules that help me read more books per year, and that's really the focus of my reading project, is to read more books, but then also to remember what I read. So these rules help me to do those things, and you may want to create your own set of rules just to as kind of a guide, of this is what's going to help you attain the goals that you're looking for in your reading life. And that may be one book a year. That might be 12 books a year. It might be 26 or 52 or 100. But you're going to have to make some changes in your life. And I find just, kind of having a rule set up in your mind, like, I'm not going to go past this rule, that kind of keeps you focused. So the first rule of 52 books per year, that's always the goal. I've only reached it this is my fifth year of doing the project. I've only reached it one out of the five years. I've gotten very close in the other years. I mean, it's like 49 books or 51 or, very, very close. But I've only gotten it one time. This year, I decided to read a series of books. So like Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia. I just finished Harry Potter last week. And then I've got a Civil War series, and then also the Robert Caro series. And so about Lyndon B. Johnson. And so I just knew going into that, like those Lyndon B. Johnson books, some of them are over 1,000 pages. And so if you're trying to do 52 books per year, it's like those take a month or more. And so I just knew it was not going to be possible. And I didn't want to stress myself out in the sense of like just something completely unattainable. So I relaxed that rule this year. And so I'm planning to end the year at 44 books. I've made some changes to my list for this year, and I can go into that if you'd like. But yeah, so this year is 44 books. So it's still more than I ever read before doing this project. But the 52 books per year is is a goal set to challenge me to read more books than I would normally do.
Number 2 was set your reading list in advance. Man, that's you and I are totally different in how we approach books, although we both read. But yeah, tell me how you do that.
So I call the approach I lived most of my life, I call it the serendipity approach. So serendipity, like you're reading one book and then it's like, oh wow, here's another book along the same topic that's mentioned in this one. After this book, I'm going to read that one. Or you walk into a bookstore and it's like, man, this book stands out. I want to read this one next. So it's just a haphazard's probably not the right word, because that it's just an approach where there's not really a plan other than just to go with what you like, which is fantastic. And that, that's great, because that's going to get you along a path where you're interested. And if you're interested, you're going to read books and you're going to want to finish them and stay up late to finish them and all that. But what I was finding is I would just kind of keep going down these rabbit holes, and I would get to a point where there would be a book where I was just not interested. So I was kind of doing this serendipity thing. One book would lead to another, and then by like the third or fourth book, I just had lost interest. And one thing I should have done in hindsight is just quit those books. But in my head, I wasn't able to just quit a book. So I would go then like 1, 2, 3 months trying to finish this book instead of going to other books. And so, and that was just more of probably a personal thing for me. But I found that if I just did the serendipity approach, that kind of thing would happen. And then I may not ever get to the books that I want to read. So serendipity approach on one side. The other approach, what I do now is set the reading list in advance. What I do each year is I've got this notebook, and I mentioned this on our last podcast, but I've got this notebook, and then in the front of it, I just list books throughout the year that I come across. Maybe a friend has suggested it. Maybe I walk into a bookstore and see it, but there's the list. And so by the end of this year, what I do is I go through that list, and it's like, so I maybe have 100 books written here or something. Now it's just a matter of like, what 52 do I really want to read next year? So what that does is there's still the serendipity aspect in the sense of, if I walk into a bookstore and see a book that I really want to read, I've made a note of it. So I plan to get to it, but I'm not going to just break what I'm doing to go to that book. So I create this list, and then I'll get into rule 3 next, but yeah. I then determine those 52 books, and then that way it's books I really want to read. And it kind of, another problem with the serendipity approach is, like, you may hear about a book a lot and it seems like it's the greatest thing ever. And then you'll get it and it's awful and you don't want to read it. And then it's kind of another problem with that approach. Whereas if you give a book a year, like if I'm making this list this year, I'm watching what people are saying about the book. I'm kind of gauging if it was just marketed really well and people are buying it because it was marketed really well, or if indeed it is a really good book. So by kind of stopping and giving it a year to watch a book, you actually kind of filter out a lot of the bad books out there, or ones that, look, we have a limited time on Earth and a limited number of books that we can read. So if you read one that you shouldn't read, like, that's taking away from one that you could read. So you can avoid that by giving a book a little time to be out in the public.
Let it marinate a little bit.
Yeah.
So number 3 then is randomize the order. So why is that, and how do you do that?
Yeah, so once I have the 52 books, I then run it through a randomizer, and it's just randomize.org, I think is the URL. And so I'll just take my list, put the 52 books in there, and then randomize it. And it that may sound trite or silly, but I know that if I am making the order of those 52 books, even if I'm not necessarily thinking about it, I'm going to stack the ones that I really want to read at the top. And I just know then I'll be super excited, but maybe not as excited towards the end of the year. But by randomizing it, they're just all mixed up. So it's not me controlling the order of those books. So it really helps me. It may not help other people, but it really helps me just to not put them in an order that might cause me to kind of lose focus towards the end of the year or something.
I've got a stack of books right here that I keep passing over because I find something else that I'm interested in, And these books have been here for most of the year. And like Warren Buffett's The Intelligent Investor, I just can't, I'm just going to have to make myself. So I might do the same thing and just start randomizing so I can get these books out of here, because I wanted to read them, but then something else will pop up, like this Rockefeller book I'm reading now, which is totally awesome. It's really great, but
and I think that's the key point of what I was trying to avoid, and not that that's a bad thing that Titan pops up and you're really enjoying it, but I just found that I would not be reading the books I wanted to read if it was just always kind of chasing after the next best thing.
Hey, this is Scott Townsend, and this is November 2021. And for the last several Novembers, I've been participating in the Movember movement. So this year, decided to start a team, and that team is the Scott Townsend Show team. So all you listeners, watchers out there, if you'd like to join me, this is November the 12th. I wish I would have thought about this. I just thought about this morning, actually. I've been not shaving since November 1st, but started investigating more about this and found out that you can create a team. So here we go. I'm going to create a team. And my goal is $200. So here's the official communication here. Did you know that on average, men die 6 years earlier than women, and for reasons that are largely preventable? It's a global problem that demands out-of-the-box thinking, which is why I'm taking on a challenge of epic proportions to raise funds for Movember and stop men dying too young. It's called the Mow Your Own Way, and for me, it looks like this. You'll see down below, www.movember.com/m/TSTS. That's movember.com/M as in Mike /TSTS, TSTS standing for the Scott Townsend Show. The money I raise will help fund groundbreaking projects across mental health and suicide prevention, prostate cancer, and testicular cancer. Movember has funded 1,250 game-changing health projects so far. But there are millions more fathers, partners, brothers, and sons and friends to reach. That's where I come in, and that's where you come in. I've set myself a bold task and an ambitious fundraising target. Your donation, big or small, will help me get there. So donating is easy. Just follow the link to my Mo space below. You'll also be able to track your progress. So can I count on your support? Together we can change the face of men's health. So there you go. Check that out. Donate. I asked you guys to donate $10. I donated 25. You'll see it when you go to my page. I'd like to hit the 200 number. So let's see what we can do. And now back to the program. Pop's Daylight Donuts. Man, they've got the best tasting donuts, sausage wraps, pastries in Northeast Oklahoma. And also, if you'll tell the staff there, hey, Scott Townsend said to give me a large spicy pig, they'll give you a free large spicy sausage wrap. But you have to tell them Scott Townsend sent you. So tell them, hey, Scott Townsend told me to tell you to give me a large spicy pig. So there's the offer. There's the call to action. So go to Pop's Daylight Donuts, say hi to Mark for me, and yeah, go to Pop's Daylight Donuts and get you some. All right, number 4, finish every book. Ooh.
Yeah, this is one, and I've done this. I've read like 230 or so books for this project so far. There's only one book I haven't finished, and that was Faust. And it's because it's divided into 2 parts. So I did read the first part, which was kind of the main part, and I just did not like it, so I stopped that one. But otherwise, I've finished every book, and this is one rule that I do not suggest to anybody else, because, like I mentioned before, like I wish I would have quit books earlier on. But with the approach that I have, I am thinking about those 52 books so much. Most of the 52 books that end up making it on my list, I've seen it, I've like held it, I've looked at it, I've had a friend suggest it to me, I may have heard about it on a podcast. Like, it's multiple places I've heard about it. I've thought about it for a whole year. By the time it makes my list, like I am super certain that I want to read that book.
Right.
So by the time I actually start reading the book, like, there's a very small chance that it's going to be so horrible that I don't want to finish it. Also, what I found in finishing every book is that sometimes the gems are at the end, or sometimes it takes 100 pages to get into a book. And if you if you have in your mindset, like, well, I can just quit if I don't like it, you may miss something really golden. So for my reading project, that's a rule, but I do not suggest that to anyone else, just in the sense of, if you're trying to kind of get on a good path, like you at first you need to be finding the books that are going to make you want to read.
And I would totally agree with you. I wouldn't suggest that to anybody else, but I'm also, if I'm reading it, I just have to finish it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so, if anybody else said, I just lost interest in, I just can't, it's like you're abandoning a book, but I haven't run across a book that's really that bad that well, maybe I have, I don't know. It's been so long.
I hear the argument, like, maybe only part of the book applies to you. Maybe it's a finance book and like you just need to get to one part of it. And that's cool. But most of the books I'm selecting are not that kind of a book to where I would only want to read one section. And so I think it depends on the type of book too.
That's right. That's right. I can think of one now just recently. I like scary stories, not graphic horror, but scary. And so I picked up Stephen King's Dr. Sleep and started going through it. It just was so weird and so twisted. I was like, I just no, I'm done. No. So I did abandon that one.
Yeah, and that's where I would break my rule on that, is if I came across a book that was either messed with my head or I guess just not morally or it's something along that way of like, I just don't want that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm the same way with movies. Like I'm just not going to put something in my head I don't want there. And so that would be kind of the only reason. But again, I've vetted these books so much by the time they get to my list, I have a pretty good idea if there's going to be some horrid thing that I don't want in my head in it, and in some books there have been, and I remember those vividly, like those scenes, some of the books for this project, and they make me shudder, but that would be kind of the main reason I would ever quit a book.
Right. Number 5, one book at a time. That's a good one.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these come from how I used to read. So I used to read, and I would have 4 or 5 books on my book stand at a time, and I just found that I would have a hard time remembering what came from what book, especially if they're along similar topics. So in that goal of remembering what I read, this is a necessary part for me. Maybe it's not for anyone else. Maybe other people can read 4 or 5 at a time and be able to. I find even if I listen to a podcast that I will sometimes get the book I'm reading at that time and the podcast mixed up in the sense of where did I hear that that content. So I even try to be careful with that of like, it just helps me to focus and to remember where ideas came from, because I can kind of picture the book and where it was in the book. But if I'm reading a bunch at the same time, it's like it messes up that part of my brain.
It seems like it slows down the reading process too, in finishing a book. Is that right?
Yeah.
Because if you have like a stack of 5 books and you're picking different, I mean, you're reading like 10 pages here, 10 pages here, 10 pages here. Well, there's 30 pages. You could have just read 30 pages from one book and got through your list faster, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those where it probably depends on the type of book. Like, I mean, I would never be able to do that with a novel, like have 5 different novels going on at the same time. But I do know some people who they have a novel going, they have a business book, and then maybe like a finance book. So like to them, they read the novel before bed. They read the business book in the morning to kind of get inspired, and then the finance book at other times to improve their finances. So I can see where that would work, but just for this project, that's one of my rules. And I really try to stick to that one.
Number 6, physical books only.
Yeah. So the joke here is that I'm an awful listener, and I say, just ask my wife. But I can't, like if I listen to a book, I cannot remember it very well. And one of the things I do for this project, it's the Books of Titans podcast as well. And so I cover the books I read on the podcast, but I found that the books that I listen to, I was not able to cover them on the podcast because I did not remember them enough to be able to cover them on the podcast. So I really only listened to books in 2018. 2017 was the first year of the project. 2018, when I was running, I would listen to some of the books, Benjamin Franklin being one of those by Isaacson, and I just could not cover those. Part of it is like if I hear the name, I can't. I need to see the actual name written out in order to be able to picture it. So that's one of the things. And then also, as I mentioned before, if I see, like if I'm reading a book, I kind of like I can see the visual of where I saw something. So even if it's like a quote that I want to go back to later, it's like, I know this was on the left side of the page. I can't remember it's not like photographic memory, but like, I can't remember like page number or anything like that, but like, I can kind of gauge like, okay, this was in the middle of the book. It was on the left-hand side, and then I'm marking the book. So I know that I marked that. So I can kind of look and find it pretty quickly. Whereas with either an ebook or an audiobook, I just can't do that. So I learned really quickly that it has to be a physical book for me. And I go even so far as to only try to get hardcovers because I'm reading a paperback right now. It's even hard. I take notes in the back, and it's hard to take notes in the back on a paperback, but in a hardcover, it's easy to take notes. I can pick any book off my shelf here, look on the back page and see the main things I want to remember. So that's all due to the physical aspect. I love the ebook aspect that I could have an iPad in my pocket, the mini iPad. I could have that in my pocket and have
Kindle,
all my books, like all my notes, but like, I just don't remember it as well. And even with that benefit of fitting all that in your pocket, like I still get more out of the physical books. The last thing I'll say about that is having a bookshelf and being able to look at those shelves. And then that helps you like, oh yeah, this book. And it kind of helps you remember the lessons from each of those books as well. Just kind of always having them around.
I saw you looking up just a while ago. Are you looking at your bookshelf now when you're So my desk is kind of like it's part of a built-in bookshelf thing. So so I've got my books right here. And it just helps, being able to kind of look. And then I have my bookshelves are around this project. So they start from the very first book I read for the project, and then they just go in order. So that helps too, because this is the order I read the books. When you do it that way, and especially by year, you start
kind of finding lessons within the books you've chosen for that year. So then looking at my shelf, it's like, oh yeah, I remember how that book connected with that book, And so just that physical aspect of it helps on a lot of fronts. I know other people that can remember everything from an audiobook, and more power to them, because they'll be able to get through so many books that way.
Right.
I can't do it.
So physical books. Okay. Number 7, always carry book and pen.
Yeah.
Goes without saying.
Yeah. And some of that's like emergency stuff you didn't plan on, like where you have to sit somewhere for 3 hours. If you have a book, you have your phone with you always. So you'll either be on your phone scrolling, or you could use that time to read. Where I really find this beneficial is I just don't ever leave the house without a book. So if we're in the car, like I've got 2 daughters. And so if one of the daughters falls asleep in the car and we're out doing errands, my wife will go into the store with the other daughter. And then I stay in the car with the sleeping daughter. Well, that's 30 minutes, and it's 30 minutes that would have been wasted on my phone if I didn't have a book. But you combine all of those 10, 15, 30 minutes throughout a day and or throughout a year, and that adds up to a lot of reading time.
Is this a book in your hand, or do you put it in a backpack, or?
I've got a backpack. I've got it like a little man purse thing, or I'll just carry it too. If it's, I know I'm going to be in the car, I'll just set it in the car type thing.
Right. All right. Number 8, family first.
If I get through 52 books and lose my family, it's not worth it. So that one is just, kind of keep things in perspective. If things are getting out of hand, if it's more important that you finish some goal to get through a certain number of books, if that becomes more important than your family, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
So that's just kind of a reminder in there of, I want to read books. I like reading books, but there's got to be perspective in all of it as well.
First things first.
Yeah.
No TV. Number 8. No. This is 9. No TV. No news.
Yeah.
Are you still on
changes
that?
I had to make. Yeah, that's changes I had to make in my life to have time, and that's probably the main question I get is, how do you find time to read? And what I do is I just I've got this one blog post on my website where it's just a chart. It says average American. Number of hours average American watches TV per day, 4.5. Average hours I watch of TV per day, 0. And that's the whole blog post. But it just kind of drives that point of like, that's just 4.5 hours of TV. Like I didn't put in the amount of time people are on social media or their phones, which is more than 4.5 hours.
Right.
If you combine that with time in front of a computer, like, there is so much time that the average American is spending in front of a screen. You don't have to do that. I know there's great TV shows out there. I know there's great movies out there. I think movies are the greatest indulgence or like, I enjoy going to movies so much. I mean, I just kind of almost consider it the pinnacle of entertainment. Like I love them.
Yeah.
And I will go to a movie and I will watch a show with my wife and I will watch a movie with my wife. But the no TV thing is more about not always having it on. And then if I have the choice between a book or a TV series, like, I'm going to go with the book. For news, that also kind of comes from previous time in my life where I read the news every day. And for school, I had to get the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. And that just kind of became a habit after school. And it got to a point where I could not tell the difference between what was truth and not. And I didn't have the time to delve in to figure out what I was reading was true and what I was reading was not true. And the more books I read, I would see, especially nonfiction, you would see them go through what the newspapers were writing as this thing was actually happening and how horribly off they were. And then as I get on further in life, there are stories that I am acquainted with of intimately, of like what actually happened. And then to see those stories in print, it's not even close to what happened. And so like some of it's firsthand knowledge, other of it is just reading books and seeing how off the news is. And then third, just kind of with everything being so polarized right now, it's like you'll see the same story on different platforms, but it's got to fit the narrative of that platform. And so it's really hard for me to determine what is the truth in that. So I would almost rather wait and read about what's happening 20 years later when there's a better analysis of what's going on. And I don't think people change all that much. So I think by reading what people are like, or novels or nonfiction, like I think you're actually getting a better idea of what is going on in the news anyway, just because one, you're learning history. So I might be learning about Syria and why they are the way they are, so that if I hear such and such group just blew up such and such group, I might have more context into why that is, instead of it just being a piece that's got to fit in with a news organization's story. So part of this opens up time for me. Other parts of it is just to remove like unnecessary stress and all that in my life.
Number 10, share work daily.
Yeah. So the idea of this is to have accountability. And so I got the idea from Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. And he just says, like, no matter what you're doing, kind of show the behind the scenes of it, show what you do on a daily basis, because it's not just the end product that it's about. So part of it was that Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. And then I was also, Jocko Willink, like he takes a photo of his wristwatch every morning, and he wakes up at like 4:30 to start working out. And yeah, Show Your Work. So, but it's like, I love that. I love that it's just his watch. Like it doesn't have to be, a selfie of him or anything. It's just his watch. It's just to show like, hey, I'm serious about it. Like this is, and it's to show that it's a daily practice.
Right.
And that's really what I want to show with this project of like, if you want to read a lot and get through a lot of books, it's a daily habit. It's something that you just work into your day, and to where now it's like, I miss it if I don't do it. And I love it. But these rules are in place to enhance something I love. It's not to like bind me into something I hate to do and just try to force my way through a bunch of books. It's like, I love doing it. So what these rules do is help to have a framework in place that can help me reach those goals. And so through this project, through seeing how I did things in the past and how I do them now, these are the rules that have helped me to reach those goals of more books, but also remembering what I read. And then just the sharing the progress daily. Like I want to encourage people to read. That's another part of the project. Like I think there's great benefit. It can change one book can completely change your life. And that's just an amazing thing to consider. And so, yeah, like if I can encourage anybody just by showing, just doing the work, like every day, like I'm reading, just like Jocko, every day he's showing his watch. Like that encourages me more than some guy getting up there like, you can do it, you can be your best you or whatever. It's like, no, just wake up and do the work, and like it's gonna happen.
Goals are one thing. I can't remember where I heard this. Goals are one thing, but unless you have a system in place to reach your goals, then you're not going to reach the goals. And so it almost seems like these 10 rules for reading are kind of a system that's in place to help get there, and which is really cool. Yeah.
And they're not your rules. And that's something I highlighted very strongly in the post and the podcast I did on this, is like, you need to create your own set of rules. These are mine. They work for me. They're not going to necessarily work for you. Maybe they will, but use this as a launch pad and create your own set of rules or ideas or whatever you want to call them to kind of guide you on the right path with that.
So let me ask you, when do you block out most of your time for reading? I mean, I'm going to imagine that you set aside a certain time in the day specifically for reading. Is that in the morning, evening, or do you even have a specific time that you block out for reading?
Yeah, I mean, with 2 daughters, that changes. It depends on school. It depends on daylight savings time. I mean, they're getting up different times now, so what I try to do is get up an hour before my family, and that's when I get most of my reading done. So I'll wake up at 5. They usually get up at 6.
Okay.
And then at night, if they're sleeping, that my daughters are to the point now where we like to be in there when kind of to put our daughters to sleep. But they want me to read in their room while they fall asleep because they just like watching me read. So I get some of the reading done there now. So I kind of cool. Read a story to them, put them to bed and lay with them a little bit, but then I'll just go on the floor right next to their bed and read.
Are there any apps that you use to help you apply to help you reach your goal that you apply to your system?
Yeah. I use the Bookly app, and I use their pro version. But and I've got it right on my home screen of my phone. So I try to put the things I really want to do on the home screen. But like the Bookly app, it shows the book you're currently reading. But then this is really nerdy. But when you start reading, you push the button, and then it times your reading. Yeah. And then you push when you stop. You put what page you got to. What it does is then show you based on your reading speed so far, this is how much longer it's going to take you to finish the book. You can even put in goals there of I want to finish this book by Friday. I've got that in there now, and it'll say, okay, you need to read 2.5 hours per day to get through it by Friday. I like tracking time just so I can share that on my podcast and on my website. Because I want to know how long it takes to read War and Peace or the Bible or different things. And so that I love sharing that just to kind of give people an idea, because I do not read fast. I read rather slowly. So I just kind of put that time of you're going to be roughly around this time if you decide to read this book. But it really puts it in perspective too, with that one rule I have where the average American watches 4.5 hours of TV. Well, if one book takes me 9 hours, that's just 2 days of you giving up TV and to read this book. So I like kind of comparing things that way as well. But I use the Bookly app, and then I use the Goodreads, which is kind of social media for reading.
My my experience with Bookly is I think it's great, and I got the idea from you once again. But my problem is I'll get up from reading, like if I'm grilling, I'll set the book down, get up and go flip the burgers or something, and then go do, and then 30 minutes later I come back and I didn't hit the pause button, and so I have to do a much better job of hitting the pause button when I stop reading.
Yeah, I think it's just so ingrained with me, and then I usually have my phone right by me as I'm reading. I turn off all notifications and sound, but I have it right next to me to where that app is showing, or they also have it on the Apple Watch, so you can it actually kind of makes it easier. You can just hit when you start reading on the Apple Watch.
Oh, really?
You can pause it and all that, so it makes it that kind of helps too, because then if you have to do something quickly, you can just kind of pause it there. So I end up using it on my watch every now and then as well.
I'll check that out. Well, Erik, looks like my time is up. I need to let you go and let you get back to your life there in Franklin. But I really appreciate your time, spending the time with us, talking about reading and your process and your system and your 10 rules for reading. And I encourage everybody out there listening, watching, you can follow Erik on Instagram. It's funny because I saw a post from you the other day, and I saw where my son had liked it. He's married and lives across town, and for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've seen him beating me to hit the heart button on your. That's awesome. So he's you'll see him on as Matt B Town or Matt Town or something like that. So he's an avid reader, and I didn't tell him about it or to tell him. I don't know how he found it, but anyway, so you picked up another follower there on Instagram.
Nice.
And I'm sure he's probably listening to you on your podcast. And so my point is, everyone, check him out on Instagram. Check out his podcast. You're one of the most methodical, man. I mean, when you listen to one of Erik's podcasts at a book review, you really get, I mean, a great book review. So I want to do a book review. There's no way I can do one as good as Erik, so I'm just gonna get over that and just muddle my way through the first one. But
it just I appreciate that, but I mean, you just gotta. One thing, I mean, I've always been afraid to share. Like one part of the podcast is I've always been afraid to share my thoughts about what I'm reading, just because it's like you think there's like this world of professionals, and they're the ones that should be talking about books,
right,
and that kind of thing. But one thing I've found for this project, and I guess what the podcast has helped me to do, is just to be comfortable in what I got out of the book and to share that. And I try not to ever look at any other notes until after I've recorded my podcast, because chances are if I'm thinking of something a certain way, other people are too. And it may not be like what you would hear at a university about a book or something like that, but it's like, these are my thoughts. I don't want to give you what other people think about the book. I want to give you what I thought based on what I've read, my life experience. And I want to encourage others to do that as well, because that's where you can really have some good dialogue about a book. And it's not just what
that's a good point.
Everyone says you should think about this book, but it's like, no, this is what I thought. This is where I thought this character was way off or right on, or this spoke to me. So, you know, if you approach the book review from that point of view, I mean, you know, you'll find your rhythm with doing that, but just don't try to make it like how someone else would talk about the book. Do it how Scott would talk about the book. And I think that's where you'll have the best luck, you know?
Cool. Well, maybe I'll start that on the Scott Townsend show. You know, like when I get through reading this Titans book, I'll do a review.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
And we'll see how it goes.
I'd love that. Yeah.
But anyway, okay. So Erik, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, booksoftitans.com. Email is Erik@booksoftitans, Erik with a K, and everything's at booksoftitans.com. You can find my other stuff all from there. So
also, what I find interesting too is you've got this little challenge, or I don't know what to call it, challenge or what, but you've asked people if they want to donate to your reading cause, they can buy. You have this Amazon wish list, is that it? Or
yeah.
And you've got all the books listed, and so those that haven't been bought yet, a person can go out and buy the book and send it to you to help you with your goal.
Yeah,
which I think is cool.
I've tried a ton of different things to help with the cost of the project and hosting and all that, and nothing's ever worked. But this one has worked, where I just said, hey, here are the books I've chosen for next year. I would love if you could buy one that, and especially one that you've read, because when you buy a book on Amazon for someone else, you can put a note. So I've probably gotten 10 to 15 books sent to me now, and
That's
people
awesome.
have been so kind, and they've written notes like, you know, I love this book and can't wait to hear what you think about it, and that kind of thing. So that's been really fun too. And I plan to mention those people when I do the podcast episodes, but yeah, that just helps with the overall cost of things, because I do like to buy the book. So
I'll have to jump in on that and get on the bandwagon there. So, all right, man. Well, I sure appreciate it, Erik, and you're welcome back anytime. Any last words?
Cool. Check out my website. I've got, I'm making a transition next year. I will go into it pretty soon on the podcast of what that transition is, but it's really going to be a shift from phase 1 to phase 2 of this reading project. And I'm really excited about it. But you can get a glimpse of it on the website, and then sometime in the next 30 days, I'll be going into more details on it on my podcast.
Cool. Can't wait to hear about it. All right, Eric. Appreciate it. This is Scott Townsend. Thanks for watching, listening to the Scott Townsend Show. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
The Scott Townsend Show is a Deetso Man production. For more episodes, visit the Scott Townsend Show YouTube channel, listen on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.